you know?
Yes.
Because we're an American church. So I have to go back to the beginning. And I think for me, there was some ignorance on that. First of all, here's the 10 Commandments. When you do the 10 Commandments, it kind of goes like a domino. Click, 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 click. What the first sin that somebody commits usually goes to the next, the next, the next, the next. And out of the 10 commandments, two of the 10 are about idolatry. And it says, thou shalt not have no other gods before me. How do you know if something's an idol? Well, it comes before God. The second thing, thou shalt not make unto thee any graven image. An idol is not something arbitrary. It's not like ambition or passion, or it's not something that's unseen. There is an object that you can see, that is it, that has been made into an idol. So something, you see, it's something that it actually has a form, and it ends up coming before God. Now, this is where it comes into this church, because this church doesn't have idols anymore, okay? They've got rid of their idols, they're serving the Lord there. But now in explaining this in the whole chapter, he explains it this way, because he repeats it twice. He says, all things are lawful for me. That means this is something that somebody does, and it's not sinful, it's not against the scripture, it's not in disobedience to God. He says, but all things are not expedient. In other words, by that means, it hasn't really benefited me spiritually in any way. All things are lawful for me, but all things edify not. So either this hasn't really helped me, and it hasn't really benefited me spiritually. So what he's saying is that something that is, there's nothing wrong with it, it can become an idol. In other words, somebody's career can become an idol. Somebody's child can become an idol. Somebody's boyfriend can become an idol. Somebody's image on Facebook and how many likes they get, that can become an idol. Is a boyfriend wrong? No. Career wrong? No. None of these things are wrong. In fact, the Bible says that we're to whatever we do, it says, whatsoever thy hand findeth to do, do it with all thy might. In other words, we're supposed to pursue, work hard for the thing that we are striving for. And being diligent, that means really working hard for something. It's found 15 times in the scripture. So it doesn't mean to say, okay, so I can't have a career, I can't pursue something, I have to go after something, because then that would be considered an idol. Because we're told to do that. So, but what he's telling us is good things can become an idol. So now, how do I weigh that? How do I know if something in my life has actually become an idol? Well, right here, it says, it begins by telling us a story. And usually we can always relate to story, because human behavior is the same no matter what. So if somebody is, their culture, their whatever part of the country they were born in, they live in, whatever time period, whatever century, human nature is the same. So he tells them a story, and he said, now these things happen unto them for examples, and they are written for our admonition. In other words, admonition, the word there you could put in as a warning, So God says, I'm going to tell you a story. Paul is telling him this, and this is a warning to good Christians. They're in church, they're serving the Lord, they don't have idols, where that maybe good things can become an idol. Because and it says, and he finishes the story by saying, wherefore let him that thinketh he stand take heed lest he fall. So somebody says, that's not me, I would never do that. That is, no. No, he's saying, yeah, you probably would, because human nature doesn't change. We all have a sinful nature that leans into that way. So this is the story that Paul tells them that serves as a warning to this church about idolatry. So I gotta go roll with that. So this is a world map, and right here, in this block right here, that is Egypt, right here, okay? So this was considered the world power. This was considered the country that, you might say, the civilized world was considered this area right here, okay? So when Joseph was brought to Egypt, then as a slave, and then he brought his family, there was 70 of them. At that time, and we're talking now 400 years later, there's 3 million. So they have multiplied. Now there was 4 pharaohs after Joseph, and then this Pharaoh, the 4th, comes along and he's like, okay, forget it. These Jews, they're more than the Egyptians. And they're prosperous, they're rich, and they're basically going to take over. So what he did, starting with him and then going with 4 other pharaohs after him, they decided to enslave the Jews, which is exactly what they did. They took away their wealth, they took away everything they had, they enslaved them, and they made their life a misery. And in spite of all this, they kept repopulating. Their population grew and grew and grew, and they said, okay, with each pharaoh tried to get rid of them. One pharaoh said, okay, the midwives, Jewish midwives, when these babies are born, if it's a Jewish male, kill it. And if it's a girl, you can let it live. Well, these Jewish midwives thought, no, God's going to judge us for this. So they didn't. They hid them. The next pharaoh came along and said, this isn't doing any good. So he told the Egyptians, if you see if it's a Jewish baby, it's a male, you kill it. Well, the Egyptians had no problem with that. A lot of times they threw them into the river to feed them to the crocodiles. So when Moses was born, his mother, who very much feared for him, put him in a basket, and put him in the river, which is pretty amazing considering I would think that would be the most dangerous place. But it floated near the palace because they believed that the river was a god. And Pharaoh's daughter came along, who is unmarried, and she opened it up, and there's a baby, a crying baby. She knows it's a Jewish baby. I mean, she could have tipped that thing over and just given it to the crocodiles. But it was a handsome, sweet little child, and she decides, I want it, it's going to be mine. And so he grew up with servants, he grew up in the palace, he grew up with privilege, and her whole mindset was, this will be the next Pharaoh. And he was actually the golden boy of Egypt. He was the golden boy of Egypt. He was taught in the wisdom of the Egyptians. You might say this, he was a prodigy. He had the highest IQ ever. He was mighty in word, interesting. He was this great speaker. He had this great orator with crowds were spellbound when he spoke. And he was mighty indeed, not only military, but also in architecture and building and everything. This was the next Pharaoh. He was amazing. But at 40 years old, he left all of that to realign with his Jewish brethren. So he left everything, refused to be called the Pharaoh, the son of Pharaoh's daughter, and he went back to his people. When he went back, he saw a guard beating on a Jewish slave, and he defended him, killed the guard. Well, now he's got 2 strikes against him. First, that he left and humiliated the royal household. Second of all, that he killed an Egyptian guard. So now he runs away. He runs into the desert and hides, and that's where he is now for 40 years. He's at 40, and now he's at 80 years old. So you see God's clock goes slowly, very, very slowly. So when God sends him back, he is now 80 years old, and he sends him back to Pharaoh. When they say, oh, he's mighty in word, but I thought he was slow in speech. Well, that's probably because he had a stroke, we think. And the stroke caused him to be slow in speech, and also he lost all confidence. Remember, here you have a man who was a mighty in word and a great orator, and now he's not anymore. And so I guess he thought, okay, then nobody's going to be interested in listening to me. But God sends him back anyhow, and with that, then we have this. We have what is the plagues. Now we're getting into the part with idols. The Jewish people did not have idols, okay? They didn't have idols. There were people who served God. It was the Egyptian who had idols. Their idols, the category of their idols would be these 10 great ones, and underneath that you go hundreds of much smaller ones. So each one of these attacks an Egyptian idol, and they start falling like dominoes. These plagues don't happen all at once. They happen over the period of 1 year. And so they go from March to March. And between each one, God gives Pharaoh space to repent, and he doesn't. And so what it's going to do is it's going to bring the Egyptian economy and everything basically into bankruptcy. So the first three, when the water turns to blood, the frogs and the lice, these were, you might say, of their lesser gods. And now you're going into now the economy. And with this one you have the flies, and now we start with these, where the word is tomorrow. Moses announces what will happen, and it will happen tomorrow. You see, God gives them the full 24 hours. Mm-hmm. And so the flies, of course, they come in and they contaminate, destroy, they plant lava and the larva, I believe is how you pronounce it, and all of their crops, everything, and barns, everything. And then, of course, you know, then their cattle and all of their livestock are destroyed. Number 5, each one of these are God. And then the boils. It's interesting. He tells Moses to go down to the furnace where they had to make the bricks, where they beat them and cause them such pain. And he takes up an ash and throws it. And then all the Egyptians are covered with boils. Oh yeah, you reap what you sow. The pain and everything they inflicted on the Jews, now they were feeling it themselves. It was head to foot. Now for their crops comes the hail. And that's the same thing where he said, you know, tomorrow. And when the hail came, so all the crops that come in, remember this is taking place over a period, a year. So sure, you may wipe out what they have in the barn here, and then you plant new and you'll just restock the barn. You're restocking the store. You're not restocking it here. It's burning to a crisp. And then whatever is left, if there you can find anything left, is the locusts are going to get. And that same thing, again tomorrow. And as the sun comes up, the locusts come, and you might say their economy is a bust. Over a year, they're basically bankrupt. There's nothing. Now this is the scary one right here. This is 3 days of darkness, where I believe, and of course you show this picture here, but actually it would be solid black, where I believe that the demonic forces of hell came out. And they said that you could feel it. And nobody moved out of their place for 3 days. So for 3 days, somebody was so petrified that they stood and they didn't move out of that spot for 3 days. They were too afraid to move. And then after that, then of course we know when the death angel came, the last, and that is when they put the blood on the door, the blood of the Lamb, which shows of Christ. And when the death angel came, remember, he passed over when he saw the blood. And then the Egyptians, when their firstborn died, finally they were released. But each one of them attacked an Egyptian idol. Now, let me go back to number 9 with this one right here. They were scared silly. I don't know if you've ever had a time, maybe you could think of something in your life that really scared you straight down to the very bones, that frightened you that deeply. That's what they went through. And then after that, after this plague, what God said to the Jews, he said, go into the house of the Egyptians, and it uses the word borrow. So in other words, that you go in, the Jews could do that, and I mean, now they're afraid, and they're afraid of the Jews. So you go in and you go, I want that shirt. I want the shoes too. I want the necklace. Give me the earrings. You can go into the homes, all the homes, whatever you want. I want that. I want that too. I want that. The food you have back there, I want that. God says, I'm not sending you. I'm sending you away, but you're not going empty. They've had 400 years of free labor. Okay, now you're getting paid. So you go in and you borrow, you take anything you want. They're spoiled. See, what a perfect picture of what it shows that God has done for us with salvation. What does God do? He spoils our enemy, which is Satan. He no longer can control us. He no longer can have us. You see what I mean? And God says now all things are ours. And so here these people that are dirt poor and rags now have clothes, now have jewels, don't have anything that they want. They're going to leave, but they're not leaving empty. Now that part is important to remember. When they're released, they go up to the Red Sea, and of course they can't pass over. And this is a picture of baptism. Salvation was the door, and this is a picture of baptism. And of course God opens it, and there's a pillar of fire and a cloud that prevents the Egyptians from following them. And when they all cross over completely, the cloud and the pillar of fire lift up, and the Egyptian army comes through, and what happens here is they're killed. It comes in like two giant buildings that collapse on top of them. So Egypt has nothing. They are bankrupt economically, military, they are no more, they're no more a threat. And on the other side, the Jews are singing and dancing, and oh, how God has just given them this amazing, amazing victory. What a perfect picture of salvation. Now you would think, what does this have to do with idolatry? I mean, it's a picture of our salvation. So, this is where it starts. The Christian life. Anybody says the Christian life is easy is lying. They're lying. It's not. It's not. God allows things for a purpose. The thing about it is this is the land of Canaan. This is the land that God has promised them. See how nice and green it is? It's full of mountains and valleys, beautiful place. This is Egypt. Okay, so they crossed over. And this is what they call the wilderness. We think of a wilderness as forest. Wilderness there is this. It's dirt, rocks, more dirt, more rocks, more dirt, more rocks. And God is going to lead them all the way down here to Mount Sinai. Now, this, if you're walking, takes about 3 days. What they don't realize is they're going to be in here, this place, for over a year. From the time that they leave, come here to here, that's going to be about 3 months. They're going to be here about 9 months. And then slowly coming up. So it's going to be over a year. So in their head, what do they think? We're leaving, hallelujah, this is great, where God has given us His promised land. And they've never been out of Egypt. After all, they are slaves. And they're following the cloud, the pillar of cloud. They're following it. They're following it where it's leading them. At nighttime, then there's a pillar, there's a flame. that's there, that they know God is there. And then during the day, it's a cloud. And so they're not deciding where to go. They're going where the cloud is leading them. So let me tell you about the first 3 months. You know, there's people that said, and I've heard this before, where somebody's gotten saved and they said, you know, we never had really problems until we started coming to this church. Yes, yeah, that would be right, because what did you think, Satan was going to leave you alone? That Christian life somehow was like a game show, or what you win, or God's a genie, you just, oh, the lamp, okay, I get everything I want, my 3 wishes? No, it's not. And this is the first 3 months, and I imagine for them, this is where they became very disillusioned. So they're going, and they went, and after they'd been traveling for days, they went 3 days with absolutely no water. They're parched, they're thirsty, okay? They come to these waters, and they're bitter, they can't drink them. There's not poisonous, but I guess it's so full of sulfur you couldn't drink them. And of course Moses is told to put the tree into the water, and then the water's made sweet. It's a picture of the cross. And then they are walking again. Now remember, they've left with a lot. They've left with carts full of clothes and food and all so forth. Well, now they've been going for now a month and a half. A month and a half. So how long do you think your food supplies will last you? In your house. How long could you eat off what's in your cabinet? Now I'm not talking about out of potato chips. I'm just talking about what you have in your house. A week maybe? Pulling stuff out of the freezer if you couldn't have to go to the store? Okay, they've gone for a month and a half, so there's nothing left. Seriously. So now they're getting desperate. They're out in this, and there's no food, there's no stores. What are they going to do? And that's when God sends manna. He feeds them every day with manna. And of course, this is showing another picture of Christ, how Christ feeds us from His Word. Then they're without water again. Oh, this is wonderful, no water, but now there's no stream, there's nothing. And then Moses hits the rock, the water comes from the rock, and wait a minute, I thought we were just going to go up to the promised land, like in it, and we would have it. No. You see, the Amalekites are very vicious and warlike people who come against them. Remember the story of Moses where they hold his arms up? Okay. That happened there in the wilderness. Oh, and then this is the best part. When you have an argument and you're, with 2 families or whatever, and you need Moses to settle it, well, honey, get in line, because there's about 200 people ahead of you. And they're all standing in a long, 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 long line in front of Moses' tent from morning until late at night, all wanting to get their request answered. So, probably not going to happen. And the thing about it is, this is his father-in-law, Jethro, who says, you need to assign people to help you. That was his advice. But the thing about it is, whatever you thought the Christian life was, that's not what you expected. I mean, I'm sure that sense of disappointment, disillusion, how you thought it was going to happen, you know what I mean? It's kind of like if you think you're going to Disney World and you think, oh, this is going to be so much fun, and it's sweltering hot, and the crowds are long, and the rides aren't so good, and after once you stood in line, and then they shut it down, and after you spend 2 hours in line, and the kids are crying, and you're miserable, okay? So you leave going, I hate this place. So you see what I mean? So I think for them, their mindset was, God has done all these great things. He destroyed their idols. He got rid of our enemies. Yes! And then this. Because in our mind, we think being a Christian is going to be this set of, I always kind of liken it to Amway. You know what I mean? These people got a house and a swimming pool and 2 Cadillacs, all in their spare time, selling toothpaste with Amway. It doesn't happen. So, you know what I mean? No, you don't get it on your spare time. You've got to work like crazy for it. So they kind of thought the Christian life, I think they saw it much different. Instead of this that it would be hardships. And then they come now, 3 months later, to Mount Sinai. What they don't realize is they think, okay, we're here and now, okay, they don't even know where they are. They just know that they're stuck down in there. They come to Mount Sinai, and the mountain is on fire. It's lightning, it's thundering, and God says, I've come down to speak. He said, put a gate around it. None of them can come near it and tell them don't break through. I've come down, and he said, Moses, you come up. I'm going to speak to you. So Moses goes up to the mountain that's on fire, and lightning and all, and that's where God, of course, gives him the 10 Commandments. He's gone for 40 days. All right, so you're down there, and you're thinking all that you went through to get to Mount Sinai. I don't think we're going to the Promised Land. I don't think it's going to happen. Where's Moses? I bet you he's dead. I bet you he's dead. I bet you they've been let out here, and he's dead, and we're stuck out here. We're stuck out here in the middle of the desert. And it's not, they're so discouraged. And that's what happens. This is what idols do. It fills a void. Discouraged, distraught, disappointed. It's not what I thought it was. It didn't turn out the way I thought it would. And then there's that void. And in that void, that's what an idol does. It fills that void. It gives you the thing that God didn't give you. And if you have to, something then is created. Something is created that fills that void. And it may not be something, it's not a statue, it may not be something bad. It may be that somebody says what fills that void is, could be a child, could be a career, could be a hobby, could be something that's now where everything goes into that, because it's filling that void of disappointment and sorrow. Now, this is what the children of Israel did. They said, we're not getting out of here. We're stuck. So what a calf represented is a calf in the Egyptian culture represented deliverance. So that means that's going to get us out of here. We're not going to be stuck, and we've been in this wilderness. Oh, okay, let me see. That was 3 months. Then we have another month and a half. 4.5 months we've been here with dirt and rocks, dirt and rocks, dirt and rocks. And I want to get out of here. I want to go to whatever this land is that we were promised. And this is going to take us out. This is going to give us, because God's obviously not going to give it to us. And so what they did is what Aaron said, this was Moses' brother, he said, okay, your gold. Remember? They were dirt poor. Where did that gold come from? That's what God gave them. He said, every one of you, give me gold. And so from that, they made this statue. Now this is how we know if something's an idol. How do you know when something is an idol, or it's just something maybe you enjoy, or something that you're putting your heart into? What's the difference? Well, it requires the best you have. That's how you know if it's an idol. It requires the best of your resources. It's going to take the best of your time. It's going to take your money. It's not going to be cheap, and it's not going to be free. It's going to cost you. It's going to take the best of your time. It's going to take your money, and it will come before God. That's what an idol does. An idol always comes before God. So instead of Bible reading or serving the Lord or whatever this is, it comes first. An idol always takes the top. It takes the cream of the crop. It always takes what's on the top. It never takes what's below. It always takes what's on top. It takes the very, very best you have is what an idol requires. Now, after they made this, you think, well, so what is that idol doing? Like, we're not moving, are we? We got the idol and we're still here. Well, Aaron says now the next one, now we have this idol. We are going to have a feast tomorrow to the Lord. So you just made an idol. You said that idol took you out of Egypt, and this idol is going to take you to the promised land. So why are we having a feast to the Lord? Why? Because you can have both? You can't have both. That's the problem with an idol. You can't have something that takes all of your attention, takes everything, and then have a relationship with God. It's like there has to be a choice. So what it says is the next day, it says, this is important, the people sat down to eat and drink. So, what's wrong with sitting down to eat and drink? Nothing. Nothing. But you see, what it's showing you is a posture. If you sit down, okay, do you sit down with people you hate? No. If you're going to sit across the table, you invited somebody over to your house, it's because you like them, okay? So that means you're all sitting down, you're all talking. Now what do they have to eat? Well, here we show other food, but that wouldn't be correct. There's nothing to eat but manna. Hello. So what you have were that what somebody would not do as an individual, they would do as a group. So you have, they're sitting down and you go, you know, when we get to that land, we were promised we won't be eating this manna. That's all we're stuck with now, is manna. Yeah, I thought after 4 months, I mean, that's all we've been eating every single day. I mean, nothing. There's nothing out here. I thought at least back in Egypt, we had cucumbers and leeks. You know, I'm ready to get something a lot better than this. So here it is, talking about eating and drinking. It's this camaraderie of complainers, all complaining about what they don't have and what God has deprived them of. And you see, complaining never just stops. When somebody complain, it never just stops with complaining. No, because it says the next thing they did is it says they rose up to play. Now, to play, by that, it's the dances that you would do in idol worship that they saw. It's like, if you've ever seen like tribal dances, that type of thing. So what God is showing is that how one leads to the next, to the next, to the next. And so people that never worshipped an idol, they didn't worship idols in Egypt. They did not worship. These were people who only worshiped God. They never worshipped an idol. Never. They didn't make idols. They didn't do this. But what happened? They became so discouraged, so distraught. There's that void, and that void was filled with something that became an idol. And so what we have right here is God shows us a progression. Now, I didn't realize this because it's all in 1 Corinthians chapter 10. He said, neither be ye idolaters. And I thought, that's the beginning? So what are the steps afterwards? So then he said, neither let us commit fornication. He's talking about that story. So that goes for unmarried, married, young, old, single, divorced, it doesn't matter. And fornication is any type of sexual sin. And it also is not just physical, but it's also spiritual. And then it comes to the next. And it says, neither let us tempt Christ. That means somebody that, you know, before they would kind of hide it and kind of be sneaky. Now they're not sneaky anymore. Now they're out with it. They're open. Anybody can know about it. They don't care. It's almost like a type of rebellion. And then the last one is neither murmur. This is what you call today deconstruction. Those are those that they trash church, they trash everything they were ever taught about God or the Bible. They're done with it. They're done with church. They're done with everything. But God roll it back, and God says, where does that progression even begin? It begins here. Something that is normal, something that is harmless, can become an idol. And that doesn't stay by itself. It leads to the next, to the next, to the next. So, this is just three things about this. And that is, because I had to ask myself, do I have idols? Do I have things that are normal, that are not sinful, that maybe I'm putting a lot of time into, I'm putting money into, is it kind of filling a void there? I mean, seriously, when you start asking those questions, it becomes, kind of almost looking in the mirror and saying, broccoli on your teeth or something. You look into that more seriously. Now, this is what Paul said. He said, all things are lawful for me. That means that there's nothing wrong with any of these things, nothing wrong with a boyfriend, a career, there's nothing wrong with those things, but all things are not expedient. He repeats it again. All things are lawful for me, but I will not be brought under the power of any. This is what an idol does. It's addictive. It's addictive. You can't quit. Dixie said that she teaches teenagers in a class. And Dixie has said, and I've said the same thing too, Dixie will say, she has an addictive nature. I have an addictive nature. And so there's things that I have to not do because I tend not to be able to walk away from it. Black licorice would be fun. Don't buy it and you won't eat the bag of it, that type of thing. So I kind of know my things that I tend to be prone to, but there is an addictive controlling power, and she was talking about cell phones. And one kid said, oh, I have a cell phone, but I'm not addicted to it. She said, okay, then let me have it. Why? He said, no, I'm just going to keep it for the day. They said, well, why? And she said, no, and they said, well, suppose there's an emergency, suppose somebody calls me. He said, okay, then I'll let you know, just let me keep it for the day. Do you know that that bothered them? They couldn't let go of it. Mm-hmm. They couldn't let go of it because they check it all the time. What are my likes? Who sees me? The image. Yeah, you would think something that small could be, it is, and remember, an idol is something, you can see it, it is something. But they even have, detoxing for gaming, because kids can't stop.
Yes.
It's addictive. But we have plenty of addictive things. I can look at them and go, what is your problem? But then I have my own too. So, you know what I mean? And that's the thing about it, is an idol, you have to realize, is not just nothing, Like that calf can't do anything, it was just standing there. But there is a controlling nature to an idol. And that's what he warns. Even Paul said that. Paul, the most religious man there was, who would not have an idol if you were to put a gun to his head. But he understood that idols aren't necessarily a statue. And he understood, even for himself, the addictive nature of something like that. The second thing, too, is this. You have to take ownership. You have to take ownership. The thing about it is, it says little children. This is speaking to Christians who obviously don't have idols. They don't have idols in their house. But it says, keep yourself from idols. In other words, to keep would be like if I had this, if I had an envelope and it had $10 $100 bills. And I said, Georgia, this is $1,000. This pays for vacation house that you guys are staying at, okay? For one day. No, I'm kidding. Keep hold of this envelope because that's going to pay for those, let's say, 5 days, all right? Don't lose it. Keep it. So now it went from me to you, and now you have ownership. That means you're responsible for it. You gotta put it up, hide it, stick it someplace, but you have to take ownership. The thing about it is I can't say with idols, well, it's not really my fault, it's the way I was raised, it's the way my mother was. If you only knew my home life, if you only knew what I had to put up with at home, if you only knew my job, all this stuff that I can throw it off
Yeah.
to say, this is why I am No. So,
You'll have to excuse me, I didn't shut it off.
okay.
All right?
There you go. So, but anyhow, it's keep yourself, so I have to take responsibility and say, if this thing is a problem, this has got a hold on me, okay, then I need to get rid of it. There was a preacher who won't even play Monopoly because he used to gamble, and taking those dice
It brings it back.
brings back, it all comes back. Is there anything wrong with Monopoly? No.
Yes.
Of course, unless you
Oh,
cheat
I know.
at it. But no, other than no. But you see, there's some people that they can't do things anymore. My son-in-law, great surfer, but he quit because it was getting a hold on him. He wanted to surf all the time. Was there anything wrong with surfing? No, but it was for him. You see, how even something that's a hobby can become an idol. And that's where the individual comes in. Now, this is one that I discussed with Dixie. This has bothered me right here because I didn't understand it. And I was discussing that with my daughter. Wherefore, my dearly beloved, boy, what an affectionate, loving thing to say to somebody. It's like somebody, I love you so much. And then he tells them, flee from idolatry. Now, when I hear that, does it seem a little like, not overkill or an exaggeration, or what am I going to do, run from a cell phone? I mean, it makes sense to me. But what it means is I have to admit my weakness. That's hard. That's really hard. In other words, if a squirrel tries to attack me, I'm bigger than a squirrel. I just take a baseball bat to it. If a tiger attacks me, forget the baseball bat. Run, because it's bigger than me, and it will eat me. So this is what they're saying with this. An idol, you don't realize it can become bigger than you. It can control you. It can end up taking your time, your money, your thoughts. It will end up controlling you. Get away from it. Whatever it is, separate from it because it will control you. And I think the hardest thing for us is to admit where we are weak. Areas of weakness. Because it's kind of embarrassing, to say, well, this is a real weakness with me. And then somebody else, that's not a weakness with them, you feel like a real chump. Like they're like, well, what's wrong with you? You're kidding. That would be a weakness with you, playing video games? Like I hate video games. So see, it's different for different people. You have to admit what your weakness is. Okay? How do you deal with this? It's only one way. Now, Jesus is speaking to his disciples, the most godly group of men, that when he's speaking to these 11, they gave up their homes, they gave up their business, they followed Christ, they absolutely godly men. And what did he tell them? Their flesh is weak. We are weak. We're flesh. We're flesh. Our flesh is weak. And he said, watch and pray that ye enter not into temptation. The spirit indeed is willing, but the flesh is weak. Yeah, our flesh is weak. Our flesh is more prone to idolatry, or else why would Paul spend an entire chapter telling us and then warning, if you think that you can stand, beware, because you're going to probably fall.
Mhm.
This is human nature. Human nature is to always gravitate that way. And so this is a solution right here, is to watch, be mindful that that's going to be a problem for me, and pray. Say, Lord, this is a weakness with me, and I need you to help me not for this to become an idol in my life. So when it says, brethren, I would not have you be ignorant, my ignorance was on idols, because I always saw it as a thing, an object, a statue. I didn't see it as something that actually that Christians have, And believe me, I've done a lot of soul searching and self-examination in my own life as well. So, well, thank you guys for coming for class. And that's all. The thing about it is when I have my last slide, I'm done. That's over. So, yes.